All right, so today we're going to be working on special angle pairs. You know, in linear geometry, it's kind of important that you know how these things work and what the actual special pairs are. So, I guess let's get right to it. First special angle pair we're going to talk about is complementary angles. Now, complementary angles are two angles whose sum is 90 degrees. So, that's going to be two angles who total 90 degrees. So if you look at the image that we have over here, okay, first you would need to know that this is a right angle, and there's our right angle indicator. And then these two angles, we'll call them angle 1 and angle 2, would have to equal 90 degrees. So the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 would have to equal 90 degrees. Now, that doesn't mean they both have to be 45. So if angle 1, let's say that angle 1 is 55 degrees, then to find angle 2 is going to be equal to 90 minus 55 degrees, which would give you the complement. And in this case, our complement for angle 2 is going to be 35 degrees. So as you can see, complementary angle is not very difficult. You just have to remember that complementary is 90 degrees. Sometimes what I'll do with the kids is I'll show them just looking at the word complementary. If you just kind of stretch your imagination a little bit and put that line in there, you could see the 90 there for complementary. So if you find it easier to do that, cool. If you don't need to do it, that's fine too. As long as you know those two angles have to total 90 degrees. So let's move on to our next angle, which is going to be supplementary angles. Now, complementary angles total 90 degrees. Supplementary angles total 180 degrees. So this is an example of supplementary angles, and again, angle 1 and angle 2. So we could say, in this case, if the measure of angle 1 is equal to 70 degrees, then the measure of angle 2 is going to be equal to 180 minus 70 degrees. So that would make angle 2 equal to 110 degrees. Okay, and again, when you look at this, you have to imagine that this ray, the ray here in green, if that ray were gone, we would be left with a line, which is a straight angle. So that's a good way to see supplementary angles when the supplementary angles are next to each other. Okay, and as a matter of fact, when supplementary angles are next to each other, they even have a special name. This particular pair of supplementary angles would be called a linear pair. Now, linear pair is when you have supplementary angles, just like we see here, where if you're able to remove the ray, you would end up with a line. Because there's some times where you'll have supplementary angles that would look something like this. Let's just say that we have something like this. Okay, pardon the crudeness of the drawing, but let's say those lines are parallel. These two angles in here would be supplementary. Okay, and again, that's not a linear pair, but they are supplementary angles. Okay, because they would add up to equal 180 degrees. Okay, our next pair, vertical angles. So, I always like for kids to come up with their own sort of definition for vertical angles. And you'll find that this is going to be helpful too, and I'll give you what I think, but just looking at this, what I'm going to tell you is that angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles. Okay, so if you look at it, you can see angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles. And yes, you're right, angle 2 and angle 4 are also vertical angles. So, angle 2 and angle 4 are vertical angles. So, see if you can think of a definition or something that would help you to remember what vertical angles are. I know for me, when I look at it, the first thing I see is that vertical angles are formed when you have intersecting lines. So we have two lines that are intersecting. So we know we're going to have vertical angles. And then the vertical angles are the angles that are opposite each other and equal in measure. So as you can see, angle 2 and angle 4 are opposite each other. They are also going to be equal in measure because vertical angles are always congruent. They're always equal. So that's the way I like to view vertical angles. And for the purpose of this video, we're going to do one more special angle pair, and that's going to be corresponding angles. Now, corresponding angle is a little bit different because if you'll notice, there's much more to this drawing than in the past drawings. Okay, so first of all, we have to have a pair of lines. And the pair of lines has to be intersected by a single line. That single line, this line here, is called a transversal. So anytime that you have a line intersecting multiple lines, that's called a transversal. Now for corresponding angles, okay, corresponding angles are going to be angles that are in the same position on different lines. So they need to be on the same side of the transversal, in the same position, but on different lines. So angle 2 and angle 6 are corresponding angles. So hopefully you can see when I draw them in, if you think about it like they're two eyeballs, okay, corresponding angles are always looking at the same thing. So those two angles are looking at the same thing. So you can see there's a lot of pairs of corresponding angles in here, right? You should also see that angle 1 and angle 5 are corresponding. And then angle 8 and angle 4 are corresponding. And then lastly, you could see that we have angle 3 and angle 7 are corresponding as well. Now, special situation with corresponding angles, if the lines that are being intersected by the transversal happen to be parallel, if they are parallel, then the corresponding angles are congruent. That's the only time that they're going to be congruent, though. So a question might be, if we call this line A and we'll call this line B, a question might be for line A to be parallel to line B, if angle 4 is 42 degrees, what is angle 8? So again, for those to be parallel to each other, angle 8 would have to be congruent or equal to angle 4. So in this case, angle 8 would have to be 42 degrees. But again, that's only in the case when lines A and B are parallel. All right, so that's our first video on special angle pairs, and there's more to come on special angle pairs because there's a lot of stuff to know about geometry. All right, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this.